Hi, and welcome to Early Retirement Roadmap, the show where I help you prepare for and thrive in early retirement. I'm 57 and retired, and the older I get, the more I realize there are very few things that should be shared outside your closest trusted circle. Now, this doesn't mean you should live your life like you're in witness protection, and it definitely doesn't mean you can't be honest with people. But it does mean some information is powerful. And once you give certain information away, you don't really control where it goes, how it gets repeated, how people interpret it, or how they use it. So, in this episode, I want to share 5 broad categories of things I never tell anyone unless they are in my innermost circle, like my wife, or they professionally need to know the information. And I'm going to frame each one of 2 ways: if you're still working and planning for retirement, and if you're already retired. The first thing I would never tell people is my exact financial numbers. And by that, I mean things like salary, net worth, portfolio balance, how much I spend, how much I withdraw, how much income I have coming in, etc. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people who need to know those numbers. Your spouse probably needs to know. Your financial planner, tax professional, estate attorney, mortgage lender, or someone helping you make a real financial decision may need to know. But that's different from casually telling a coworker, a neighbor, a relative, or someone on the internet. While I was still working, I would not have told people my salary. I would have not told them my bonus. I would not have told them how much I saved. And I definitely would not have walked around talking about how close I was being able to retire. Because once people know your numbers, they don't just hear a number, they attach a story to it. If the number is higher than theirs, some people may feel jealous, resentful, or judge you as lucky. If the number is lower than they expected, they may think you're making a mistake. If the number is close to theirs, they may start comparing every choice you make to every choice they make. And in retirement, it can get even stranger because if I share exactly what my nest egg is, the number means almost nothing without the context. Because how much I need depends upon a lot of factors like where do I live? What are my expenses? Do I have debt? What does my health insurance look like? Do I have rental income? What will Social Security look like later for me? What is my benefit? What kind of lifestyle am I trying to fund? Someone else could hear my number and think, that's way more than enough. Another person could hear that exact same number and think, that's not nearly enough. And both could be wrong because it's not their retirement, it's mine. I've even had people ask in comments on my YouTube videos for my exact financial numbers, and I understand the curiosity, I really do, but I'm never going to share that publicly because it's private, and it's also not necessary because my situation is not your situation, and your situation is not mine. The lesson isn't, here's my exact number, now copy it. The lesson is how to think about the pieces that make your numbers work. There's also a very practical reason to keep financial numbers private. Once family members or friends know too much, it can change the relationship. Someone may ask you for a loan. Someone may assume you should pay for something. Someone may think you're being cheap if you said no. And if you do loan money to a family member or a close friend, you almost have to assume you may never see it again. Because asking to be paid back can create resentment, and not asking can create resentment too. And that can be a pretty efficient way to ruin a relationship. Now, I know some people will disagree with the not sharing the salary part. They'll say, not talking about salary only helps employers. And I understand the argument. There are absolutely situations where pay transparency can help workers know whether they're being underpaid. But that doesn't mean I need to tell every coworker, friend, relative, or neighbor exactly what I make or what I have. There's a difference between using good salary data to negotiate and handing out your personal financial details to people who do not need them. You can use salary ranges, job postings, recruiter conversations, compensation surveys, and sites like salary.com, Glassdoor, or other market data to understand your value. You can also talk to a trusted mentor or a trusted peer in the right context. But that's very different from casually giving your actual number to people who may repeat it, resent it, or use it against you. So for me, the rule is simple: financial numbers are need to know, and most people do not need to know. The second thing I would never tell people is anything that could hurt me if it gets repeated before I'm ready. And that includes two big things: my exit plans and my unfiltered opinions. If you're still working, that means I would be very careful about telling people you're thinking of quitting, changing jobs, retiring early, or going part time before you're actually ready to make those moves. And I know that can be hard. Sometimes you're frustrated. Sometimes you want to vent. Sometimes you want someone at work to say, I get it. I'm sick of this stuff too. But telling the wrong person you're thinking about leaving gives them information that can hurt you. It may get back to your boss. It may change how you're viewed. It may affect promotions, bonuses, and assignments. And even if nobody means harm, we all know people talk. One person tells one person, that person tells another person. And before long, the thing you said when you were frustrated becomes part of your reputation. If your company knows you're planning to retire in a year or two, maybe they start planning around you sooner than you wanted. Maybe they decide you don't need that raise. Maybe they decide you don't need that bonus. Maybe they decide you're not the person to lead the next project. Or maybe they just start treating you like you've already left. And if the company needs to make cuts, maybe you become the easier choice because, well, you were going to leave anyway. That doesn't mean you should never have a thoughtful conversation with your employer. There may be a point where it makes sense to discuss a transition, negotiate part time work, set a retirement date, or give proper notice. But that should be on your timeline when you have your ducks in a row, not because you vented to the wrong person 6 months earlier. And the same principle applies to your unfiltered opinions. I would be very careful about sharing what I really think of my boss, certain coworkers, or people I dislike. There is almost no upside. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're completely justified. Maybe the person is really difficult. But once those words leave your mouth, you don't control where they go. If you need to talk through a hard work situation with your spouse, a very trusted friend outside of work, a counselor, or professional advisor, that's one thing. But trashing your boss or saying who you can't stand at work is like handing someone a lit match and hoping they don't walk toward gasoline. And this doesn't end when you retire. Once you retire, you may still volunteer. You may join clubs. You may be part of a neighborhood group, a church group, a hobby group, a board, or some other community. And the same rule applies. You do not need to tell people every negative opinion you have about someone in the room. Because retired or not, social circles can be small. Things get repeated. And sometimes the person you complain about today is having coffee tomorrow with the person you complained about. So to me, this whole second category is really about control. Don't give away information that can cost you control of your timing, your reputation, or your relationships. The third thing I would be very careful about sharing is personal vulnerabilities that can be used against you. Now, I'm not saying you should be ashamed of having struggles. Everyone has struggles. And I think it's healthy to get help when you need help. If you're dealing with something serious, whether that's anxiety, depression, addiction, grief, a medical issue, body image issues, eating issues, or any other personal challenge, I absolutely think you should get support from the right people. But the right people is the important part: a doctor, a therapist, your spouse, a trusted family member, a very close friend who has earned that trust over time. That's quite different from telling coworkers, casual friends, neighbors, or people who have not earned the right to know the most private parts of your life. When you're still working, certain personal disclosures can change how people see your judgment, your reliability, your promotability, or your ability to handle pressure. Is that fair? No, but it happens. And in retirement, it can still affect how people see you too. If people know too much about your mental health, medical situation, insecurities, or personal struggles, they may start questioning your decisions. They may question whether you should manage your own money. They may question whether you're thinking clearly. They may treat you differently, even if nothing has actually changed. And insecurities are especially tricky because when you hand someone your insecurity, you may be giving them the exact thing they need to hurt you later. Now, not everyone will do that, of course. Most people would never use that information, but the wrong person can. And if you're insecure about your body, your age, your weight, your health, your money, your intelligence, your career, your marriage, your kids, your retirement, or whether you're doing enough with your life, anything like that, be careful who gets access to that information. Now, of course, not everyone's bad. If you disclose information like this, some people will support you. But some people will quietly judge you, and some people will store it away and use it when it benefits them. I know that may sound really cynical, and I don't mean it to be. It's just reality. You can be open, but you need to be very selective whom you share stuff like this with. Only your most trusted inner circle or professionals you may be specifically working with on issues and have a reason to know and are professionally obligated to keep this information private. You can be honest, but still have boundaries. You can get help without making your private struggles public property. The fourth thing I would never share is access to my accounts or identity information. This one is less emotional and more practical, but it might be one of the most important. Never casually share passwords. Never casually share your social security number. Never reuse the same password everywhere. And don't treat your email password like it's just another login because your email is often the gateway to everything else. This matters when you're working, and of course, it still matters in retirement to protect our retirement assets. Use a reputable password manager. Use strong, unique passwords. Turn on two factor authentication. Make sure your spouse or trusted person has a safe way to access what they would need if something happened to you. The fifth thing I would be very careful about sharing is my private life with people who are not in my inner circle. And this includes social media, politics, religion, personal goals, and how I spend my time. When I was working, I did not think of most coworkers as my friends. That doesn't mean I didn't like them. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy working with some of them. And there are a small number of people from work I still stay in touch with and would consider real friends. But for the most part, coworkers are not automatically your friends. You work with them because that's where you make money. You didn't choose them to be your friends. And that means I would be very cautious about adding coworkers to personal social media. They don't need to see every vacation photo. They don't need to know every family detail. They don't need to know every opinion, every weekend plan, every frustration, or every personal thing you post. And once you retire, I think the same idea still applies. You may not have coworkers anymore, but you still have neighbors, acquaintances, former coworkers, volunteer groups, social circles, and people who know just enough about you to form opinions. So be careful about who gets access to your personal life. And politics and religion are a big one. I know some people are very comfortable sharing their views, and that's their choice. But for me, those are areas where people have very strong feelings and the world feels more divided than ever now. A single comment can change how someone sees you. A single post can create tension with family, friends, neighbors, or former coworkers. So, unless there's a very good reason, I really don't see much upside in turning every relationship into a debate stage. I would also be careful about sharing personal goals too early. This may sound strange because goals are usually positive, but when you tell people what you want to do, some people will support you, some will judge it though. Some people will tell you why it won't work. Some people will think it's silly, and some people may quietly hope you don't pull it off. If you're working and you tell people you want a promotion, you may be telling someone you want the same thing that they want. If you're planning to retire early and you tell people too soon, you may invite jealousy, criticism, or pressure before you're ready. And if you're already retired, people may judge your goals because they think retirement should look a certain way. Maybe you want to travel or garden or start a YouTube channel or a podcast. Maybe you want to volunteer. Maybe you want to do absolutely nothing for a while. It's your retirement. You don't need everyone's approval of what you're going to do and how you want to spend your time. One of the strange things about retirement I've discovered is that sometimes people may still expect you to justify your day, especially if you retire early like I did. I get questions like, "What do you do all day? Don't you get bored?" And I get the curiosity, but I also think there's a point where you do not need to keep proving that your life is useful enough for other people. If you spend decades working, saving, investing, planning, and making decisions so you can have more control over your time, you do not need to apologize for having more control over your time. So, those are the five big categories I would be very careful about sharing. Your exact financial numbers, your exit plans and negative opinions before you're ready for them to be known, your deepest vulnerabilities with people who have not earned that trust, your passwords, account access, and identity information, and your private life with people who are not truly in your inner circle. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying you should trust no one. That would be a miserable way to live. The goal is not to build a wall around your entire life. The goal is to know the difference between your inner circle and everyone else. Your inner circle gets the honesty, your professionals get the information they need to help you. Everyone else gets boundaries. And I think that becomes more important the closer you get to retirement because retirement gives you more freedom, but it also changes how some people see you. Some people will be happy for you, some will be curious, some will be supportive, some people will compare, and some will judge. And some may quietly wonder what your freedom says about their own life. You can't control any of that, but you can control how much information you share with people. And that's really the point of this episode. Not everything private is secret. It's, to put it bluntly, just none of their business. Before we go, some freebies to share that are available on my Patreon, and the link is in the description or show notes. You can join for free and download these from my tools collection. First, you can download my 12-step early retirement planning checklist. It's a practical, easy-to-follow guide that walks you through everything from calculating your FIRE number to building a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy. Second, if you're on an ACA health plan or are planning to be if and when you retire, download my ebook, ACA Premium Shock Fix: 10 Ways to Pay Less for Marketplace Coverage All Year Long. This ebook gives you a clear, practical framework to lower your ACA premiums legally by understanding and controlling the income number that drives your subsidy, MAGI, or modified adjusted gross income. And lastly, download my ACA MAGI Estimator. It's an Excel template that can be used to estimate your MAGI for ACA health insurance, and you can also use it to keep track of your MAGI if you're currently on ACA health insurance to help stay within the 400% FPL threshold to maintain subsidies. And if you're interested in more help and while you're on my Patreon taking advantage of the free downloads, you can also check out the paid membership levels. There are options for additional tools, ad-free and early podcast access, and a higher level where you can ask me your retirement questions directly. Lastly, go to mikehelpland.com for all of my media. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, take care and make the most of today.